don't know what I'm doing in my life. Society has such a big pressure for all our kids to go to a prestigious school, to get a job, to get a degree. We are always stressed about not knowing, but I think not knowing in itself is a good thing because it tells us to start looking.
We're on a playground. Like this life right now, what we have is our playground, and we get to play with it. What are topics that are actually worth learning? What we would tell our 18-year-old selves.
If I was to tell my younger self, like I I don't know, like the thing is like when you're like to me when I was 17, fresh out of high school, I really didn't have any idea how the world worked. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about like the big scale of things. I'm talking about like just knowing how the process worked.
Yeah.
Like you think you know everything because I think one of the traps in high school is you fall into the trap of like, well, if I have good marks, that's all
Yeah,
that matters.
because that's the only thing in your awareness.
Yeah,
It's like all the teachers who are kind of perpetuating the system, that's all they
yeah,
kind of.
yeah. Because in high school, I think I don't know if it's from a business or economy perspective, but the whole point is to get you to at least want to go to university. Because I remember the hate people, like some people got, like not even the hate, you know, it's more like the looks, the talks of like, oh, they're just going to Lingera or
Yeah.
Contlin. Oh, like you know, they're just gonna do some shit on their own.
Well, high
Um,
school almost acts like marketing. It's just it's like it markets for university
exactly.
as if it's the only thing that matters
Yeah.
coming out of like it's but once you step out into the real world as they call it,
Yeah.
you quickly start to see it's like
It's different.
university is not even a speck of dust on
Yeah.
in the
And
grand view of what you could be
I don't know. Like
doing.
I understand people. Like if you want to be a computer scientist, I mean the way the industry works is you're just gonna have to go to university. There's no like
Yeah.
other way around that. If that's your life goal, and university's your way. Just know that not every life goal has to go through a university. Like I wanted to take a year or two off to figure out what I wanted to do, but
Right.
like I was somewhat pressured to just go to school
Yeah.
and
In
focus.
in hindsight, not everything's nowhere near everything's about
Yeah,
university. Matter of fact, very little is about university.
yeah, I
But
know.
but it's like when you're raised like out of high school, you're raised by adults around you,
Hmm.
whether they're teachers or parents,
Yeah,
into this perception that university is the only thing that matters. And it's really not. Like for
hmm,
me, I took kinesiology, right? A bachelor of kinesiology,
hmm,
which is the study of human movement, and it was a 4 year degree.
yeah,
And then I only like when I'm about to grad, like literally a month before I graduate, I find out for the first time that I could have like, say, I could have literally just learned a skill within kinesiology. So like
hmm,
RMT, registered massage therapist.
yeah,
Literally straight out of high school, you can go to RMT school for
hmm,
2 years
for 2 years.
and
Yeah,
then come out of it and make like $150 an hour doing
yeah.
massage,
Do massage.
doing
Yeah,
it because you took
that's
a
what
professional
you know.
degree.
You know what's crazy is one of our
But
friends.
I don't know why we're sold this idea of like you should go to university when that they teach you like general knowledge. But it's all theoretical.
It's all
In a
theoretical.
lot of
Yeah,
in a lot of faculties, it's
yeah,
like it's not applicable. Whereas if you go to specialty
yeah,
school or even just blue collar schools, right, learn specialty trades and
yeah.
skills. It's like
Trade,
you could
dude.
be
People, we need tradesmen in
right.
this economy. Like people don't talk about that. And I think what's incredible to me is like I wish in school, not only, you know, aside from the stuff you talked about, I wish they taught you like workplace intricacies, formalities. You know, you get into a workplace, a lot of people aren't experienced. They don't know what it's like in there, right? The school never like taught me stuff in the workforce, and I get it. You know, school, you're only going to school from 9 to 3, and they got to squeeze everything in. But I wish I think like the one course that actually gave me a sense of alertness of what society would be like was senior planning, and you had to learn that just 1 year, and that was one class of 8 other courses. For so like my point is like the shit that goes on beyond school. I never learned about. I had to learn that shit on my own. So looking back, if I could tell my 17, 18-year-old self what to prepare for the future, is like, school did give me the impression that you got to, like, whatever it is you're pursuing, don't always go for it because of the money. Try to do something you're passionate about. Because I have I know a lot of people. I shouldn't say a lot, but from a personal perspective, I have known a couple of guys that, went through, I myself included. They studied something, and it's not something they really wanted. Now, they
Yeah,
probably did that
it's the
because of,
vast majority of
yeah,
people, because they don't know what they want. They're just
yeah,
forced into, it's like, oh, you to think that, oh, I should want to do this, because just to kind of
yeah,
not look out of place, right? Like, it's like those people who take a gap year. It's like it's almost like, in a sense, like, what are they doing, right?
yeah,
Everyone else just wants to, like, I don't know,
yeah, dude.
rush to jump to conclusions and things, but not really
Hmm.
settle down and just like figure out what it is they
Yeah,
never thought about life.
yeah. I mean, let me tell you this story, right? Like, political science is such a huge faculty. People, I think, especially in this day and age. So when I was growing up, nobody talked about politics. Nobody talked about anything political. I mean, 2009 to 2015 was relatively. There weren't a lot of political talks during that era, but for some reason, um, right, I was grade 12. A lot of the political talks trickled down into classes like social studies and law, where these things were talked about, and that's what got me really into wanting to study political science. And I think in school they encourage you, because if you're fascinated about a field of knowledge, that's generally what the teachers and what they want you to do. I just a big thing was just that um, it's a hard field to find a job, right? I did 4 years of studying political science, and I love it. But the only issue was like, good luck finding a job, man. It's 3 years of theory. There's only so few. Like, there's only a few cores that taught you practical applications, and then with
Yeah,
statistics, and like, I don't know. It's like everyone. I think the problem with me is just I wish I knew more about what the world is like.
right. That brings me to this point, and it's like, let's forget about the entire school system and mainstream education for a second. It's like, what? Let's talk about what we wish we would have, or what someone that's, say, younger, or feels, disillusioned with the education and feel like they're not learning what actually matters. Like, what are topics that are actually worth learning? Like, I'm just gonna throw some out right now. Like, I think fitness, big one, right? You have to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
take care of your body,
Yeah.
whether that's through exercise or through nutrition, right? This is the vehicle you carry with yourself
Mm-hmm.
through life.
Yeah.
um, I think I think philosophy and
Yeah, dude.
psychology is a big
Nobody
one,
taught that shit
because
back in
at
school.
school you don't learn about any
Yeah.
emotional intelligence. You don't learn how to like they conduct yourself in relationships. Like, for example, it's like, what happens if this, you don't, like, case studies of like all the scenarios you'll come across in your
Mm-hmm.
life
Yeah.
of that's like, in relationships, how do you deal with it, right?
Yeah.
um like, what else? Probably politics, but I mean, like, politics to a degree where you're not
Dude.
attached
Well,
to one side,
yeah.
because you can be taught politics, but you're just going to, you're like, depending on how wise your teacher or
Well, like,
professor is.
in high school, the teachers are also taught to not mention politics and not teach it.
Yeah,
But the issue, I think, is just like information, man.
right. But
Like,
I mean, like, knowing how the world works at a political level, and how at the macro level, it's like everyone's driven by these. The world is controlled by these, like, or these governmental entities, and like, you have to see the world in its totality, like,
mm-hmm.
not solely as one of the entities, but see through them, and see how, like, every entity is in conflict with each other, and be able to step outside of it,
Exactly.
and kind of not get attached to the political fight,
Mm-hmm.
which they don't teach, which is why everyone gets so, like,
Yeah, everyone gets so all over the place. Like,
yeah,
another thing is like, I get like, I get that it's necessary to promote like anti-bullying acceptance, but and this might be a little bit controversial, but there's a lot of groups like um there's a lot of political movement and groups that have formulated into this like collective identity for good. Like a lot of these like NGOs, a lot of these political groups are based on good intentions, but over time they have become something that's not who they used to be, or their
Mm-hmm.
message have changed. And this could be in a good way or in a bad way. So like Greenpeace is a good example, right? They started off good, but now they're literally like ramming boats in the middle of oceans to stop like fishing, which is highly dangerous, right? Or even to an extent, like I remember grade 10, right? LGBT. I supported that, and I still do. At that time, it was the message was very simple, right? When I was grade 10, it was like, listen, like let's not bully people for being different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the message was pretty. It was just acceptance. Just like if
Yeah.
someone's gay, queer, whatever, lesbian, just let them do their thing. You know, and I was supportive of that. But like, man, like coming back to what it was before was, I felt like all of this, the whole like political talk was such a big distraction for me personally. If I could go back in time to 2017, tell
Yeah.
myself to just focus on a trade, a
Well, that's what
profession.
you. It's like one of the things
Yeah,
like. It's like all these good intentions. Sooner or later, they all become politicized.
yeah,
And as soon as a good intention becomes politicized, more often than not, it becomes pretty
yeah,
toxic.
yeah,
Um,
dude. So let me give you an example, right? Of like what I think on a big scale with my personal life, right? I was doing that test I was talking about, the Wonderlic for the ATC program, um, which is an air traffic controller training program. I couldn't find a job related to political science right out of university, and that kept me down because everything I look for, anything from personal assistant to office assistant to clerical work, I just couldn't get a job. So I wanted some, if I couldn't get a job with what I have right now, and I don't have time to go back to school, I could look to be in a training program where a lot of these programs they pay you just to be in it.
mhm.
These are actual jobs that the government needs. Like school doesn't really talk. Nobody talked about this back then, right? The focus was on, and this isn't bad. Like you can have A and B at the same time, but the problem with me was there wasn't any talk with like, oh, there's a lot of government program, blue collar trade programs. Um, they pay very well, and these are stable jobs, so high income, and these are genuinely good skills you can learn, and you can learn that skill and take it somewhere else, and still be able to use it. So if you learned it in Canada, you can move to the United States and use it. So like civil engineers, for example, right? Um, Land survey. I didn't even know that shit existed. I wish school talked more about these jobs. The only time in my course of high school where I had a remote understanding of like, oh, well, there's actually more jobs out there was in this one class of senior planning. Just this one day, we went to the computer labs, and our teacher got us to do a self survey online, which was supposed to find you a job that matches your personality. And guess what I got? I got forest firefighter.
Hmm.
Um, obviously no one would know, but I used to be really skinny and tall, so that wasn't even going to be a job that was physically possible for me. But like that was my point, right? It was like that was the only instance where I had a remote understanding of like possible jobs I could have outside of uh, university, and I don't know. I feel like coming back to the ATC thing I was talking about, I was doing that test, and I remembered I did a similar test back in 2016, and it goes to show you that society has such a big pressure for all our kids to go to a prestigious school to get a job, to get a degree, but like, man, I wish we didn't care so much about that as a society. We didn't care so much about like especially from parents. Um, I wish my parents, I like that they pressured me into doing, not even pressure, just they pushed me towards learning, which I respect. But I wish, um, it wasn't just a
No,
push towards
there's
university.
n- there's a big lack of like giving your child the capacity to explore their own curiosities, I think,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just kind of pushed down the conventional route,
Yeah,
and
that's
which
rough,
which
man.
makes sense, right? It
Yeah.
makes sense from a logical point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to make a living, all
Yeah,
that. But then it's like, I think especially like Gen Zs growing up now
dude.
are very, disillusioned with the whole thing, and with all the social media and stuff and content creation,
Yeah,
digital creator, all of that stuff.
man.
Everyone's finding the good. Gen Zs are realizing that, the traditional path isn't, it's neither fulfilling nor
Yeah, I
nor
know.
optimal, given that the internet
Yeah,
has.
everyone, dude. Here's another thing, right? Everyone wants a good job that they could brag about. That like is a highlight. Look at me. I work at Microsoft. That kind of thing.
Right.
I mean,
But that's the funny thing. The title is the highlight.
yeah,
That's just a word.
yeah,
Senior software engineer at Microsoft. The
yeah,
title is the highlight, but the day to day. I mean, sure, there are people
yeah.
who fucking love it, right?
I
But
mean,
like,
look, it's done out of ego. Let's not hide it.
yeah,
Everything we do has an ounce of
yeah,
ego behind it that
right.
drives us, right?
Right. Well, watching so many people jump on the tech bandwagon, right, to go
Mm-hmm.
study comp sci and university and all that.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, of course you have the people who are passionate about it, but then what about the other, the others kind of just there to hop on
yeah,
the bandwagon and kind
dude.
of secure nice prestige, right? But it's not really.
I don't know, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. One of my childhood friends, this guy became a plumber. And it's like, back in 2016, 17, it's like, who the fuck wants to be a plumber? And it was seen as like the easy way out, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, but let me tell you something, right? This guy's one of the happiest guy I ever known.
Hmm.
He's chill as fuck, man. You know why? Because he's removed ego from the equation. He's like, I'm
Mhm.
fine with doing this. I don't
Mhm.
really particularly love my job, but I'm okay with it.
Mm.
It pays. My happiness doesn't have to come from, having a fancy job title.
Hmm.
It comes from what I do outside of work. And that's another
Hmm.
thing, man. That's another thing people don't understand. Who we are, like what defines our happiness, what we're passionate about, doesn't have to come from our job, man. So many people are so
I
enticed
think,
to having a
well, I
job.
think I think this whole ego thing stems down to a lot of us being raised where we aren't made to feel good enough. Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
ever feel like we're good enough,
Yeah.
and so then
There's never, it's gluttony, man.
it stems from this chronic like lack
Mm-hmm.
and inadequacy, so we feel like we have to prove something of ourselves,
Yeah.
whether that's becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a big tech bro, or
Yeah.
it's like, even though we don't like, it's not a true,
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
calling for us,
And
but we do it nonetheless, just to buffer that sense of not being good enough.
I know, man. And like,
but
another thing. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
but I think we need to realize, it's like, if we're not good enough, if we don't think we're good enough now, we'll never think we're good enough. Doesn't matter how high we climb, in a sense, because it's not the achievements that make you feel good enough. It's a state of mind of
Yeah,
self-acceptance. And
bro. You couldn't have summed it up any better. The way I see it, the other day I had this revelation. It's like, prior to that moment, I was like, fuck, man, I don't know what I'm doing in my life.
hmm,
I can't find a job. I'm
yeah,
stressing, But I realized at the same time, it was a blessing, man. Because I might not know what I'm doing. I might not have anywhere to go, right? I'm at this enormous crossroad, and there's so many different paths I could take, but that's a blessing, man. There's so many times when I was in school, when I was in UBC, I was like, I'm 3 out of the 4 year where I'm into my education, and I'm like, fuck, man, I want to call it quit, and I have two options. I either quit the program and restart everything, which I didn't want to do. So what I'm trying to say is that I felt pressured by not giving up,
right,
therefore to continue. And for the first time in my life, it's like, hey, man, aside from short on cash, I'm free to do whatever I want starting from this moment. I could decide on anything I want. And, we are always stressed about not knowing. But I think not knowing in itself is a good thing because it tells us to start looking, right? And I felt so gifted in that moment. It was like a moment of revelation where I was like, I might not know where to go, but I'm at this enormous crossroad
yeah,
where nothing is holding me down and I can
right.
start pursuing any
I,
other option I want.
I,
And
I
and like, we live in a society with so much mental health. people being depressed, people talking to counselors.
So little,
Like,
I guess.
yeah, and like,
Yeah.
but like, I think it's because whenever we're at one of these moments where we don't know what to
Right.
do, we see it as a problem.
Yeah, like we have to.
Yeah,
Right.
we could see it as like a blessing, man.
Right.
Like at that moment, I was like, I could go home tonight and find whatever job I want based on anything I know, and it's all because I have suffered through like failure, and it's because we have failed, we
Right.
gain more
Well, I
experience,
think
right?
that's the big thing that, like, what you're saying is like, when we're at this crossroad of uncertainty, we're so often so quick to jump to conclusions out of the fear of this feeling. We
Mm-hmm.
try to get out of it as quick as we can,
Yeah,
and then we try to like rationalize or justify it to ourselves something like something. We take the easy way out
we
essentially. We
really
just
do, man.
whatever looks good. It's like, yeah, I want to become that because
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't make us need to actually think
Yeah,
what it is we really want.
Lao Tzu said, just go with the flow, man. You don't always have to follow through this plan you made 5 years ago. Let me tell you what, man. The issue with making plans at such a young age and not fulfilling that
It's
plan as
always
time goes on,
changing.
life change, man.
Yeah, life
Life
change.
changes fast, right? Like, and the issue is like when if I had I like my plan when I was 17 was go to school, get a degree, and get a job in that field, which was hopelessly naive, right? Because like some fields, you're gonna succeed. Comp sci, of course, be a software developer, civil engineer, of course, but you can't always expect every field to be that way. And like my point was, I didn't know anything about life when I was 17. I think it's important to just like instead of setting checkpoints for yourself, maybe just set a general direction and just go towards that direction and let life take you
Yeah,
places, right?
right.
Because
That's spot on.
let me tell you another thing. This was oh, man. Here's another thing, right? Once you're dead set on fulfilling this like clandestine like plan of yours,
Yeah.
you start to deny other opportunities that might be better
Yeah.
than your plan. I had this
Yeah.
opportunity from my dad a long time ago to go to flight school, and I passed it on because I
Right.
was dead set on pursuing something that I've
Yeah.
already started.
Yeah.
We're so afraid to give up on these
Don't
progress
don't
sometimes.
become ideological with planning your life.
Yeah.
It's a lot like politics. As soon as you start to become ideologically driven,
Hmm.
you'll sacrifice anything to get the outcome you want. And we saw that in the 20th century, right? With fascism, with communism, all of that.
Yeah.
They took it to the tens
They
of
took it to the
millions of
extreme,
deaths
man.
to prove that they were right about their ideas, right? And what
Yeah,
happened,
like
right?
was it necessary,
In the
like
same way, it's like I think the single strongest thing you can have as someone finding their purpose and like direction in life is to have a direction, a strong
hmm
sense of direction,
yep.
but not insist on a
Don't enforce it,
like a
man. Yeah.
ideological enforced kind of plan, because you
Yeah.
don't know where life is
Dude,
going to lead you, and all these
yeah.
opportunities
I mean,
pop up. um, and as long as you have a direction that drives you, that's really all you need, because
yeah,
it allows you to adapt and stuff. It's
man.
like water, it flows through the cracks
Yep.
rather than when it blocks something, it flows right by it and
hmm
past it, right? Rather than
Yeah.
if you're to rigidly like chip away at it, it's not going to work,
I
right?
think an important thing is, we're not taught this because, especially with like modern media, it's like either I'm right or you're wrong. But what we really need to preach, I think, if I was to look back to myself when I was 17, or even tell people around me back then, is, you know, allow other people to change your mind, allow
Yeah,
your because you got
yeah,
allow yourself to grow, man. You got to allow your
yeah,
agency to expand.
right.
You
A
know,
lot of times it's like, don't just close your mind down to your
yeah,
own little world,
yeah,
because it goes back again to that's how you become an ideologue. That's how you
yeah,
become trapped in your own thoughts, in your own world,
yeah,
in your own insistence about how this is how the world should be.
yeah.
It's like, who are you to
Dude,
say,
the
right?
more
It's that
the more
humility.
you narrow your life path, the more strict and less agency you have to do what you want in life, right?
Right,
If you
right,
the more you enforce your
right,
own idea, the more it narrows down. It then at that point it's no longer you that's in control. It's
right,
the ideas that you
right. And
enforce.
then you become stuck in your own matrix,
Yeah.
which is a false view of the world. And in that matrix, you're blaming everyone, everything else, because not realizing you're the one stuck in that matrix, creating that
hmm
perception of everything, right?
Yeah.
But once you stop just stop that narrowness, stop that closed-mindedness, open up and kind of accept things even though they may be uncomfortable and you've never like, you know, faced them for
Mm-hmm.
what they really are. But it's in that facing that you truly, that humbles you and makes you realize like, wow, I don't actually know anything. And but that's the good news, I think, because you also realize that nobody really knows anything.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think this analogy, um, it's like you're a kid, right? You play on the playground. Is there a right way to play on the playground, right?
Yeah.
And then we become adults, and then we think, oh, we have to,
Hmm.
go this way, right here, fastest way, the
Yeah.
best way. We have to get through it as fast as possible, as best as possible, make as much money. It's like this narrow-mindedness of turning a playground into a
They're just enforcing
into a sing
order, you know?
into a tyranny. um,
Yeah.
but we have to come back to kind of like almost being like that child again, in the sense of being able to see that we're on a playground. Like this life right now, what we have is our playground, um, and we get to play with it.
Yep.
And you know there is no right way to go to play around the playgrounds. Like it doesn't matter to a child, like what's faster, what's better. To a child on a playground, that doesn't fucking matter. They're
Mm-hmm.
just here to play, like, and explore. And I think if we give ourselves that opportunity to stop seeing life so single-mindedly and to open ourselves up to that childlike wonder again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just it doesn't matter how stupid, how slow, how unoptimal
Yeah.
we go about things. It's that what matters is that we are exploring our own lives along the way, and rather than close down into that narrow-mindedness, we open back up and start to
Yeah.
truly see the beauty of things again. And that's where we find the fulfillment within the whole living of our life, rather than feeling like, oh, we have to get to this
Yeah,
destination,
dude,
get there, I'll
dude.
be happy when I
Let me
get
tell
there.
you this, man. Let me tell you this. Learning about the world outside of your pursuit, I would argue it's just as important to become someone better, right? Because the way I see it, you're pursuing things in life, right? Your job, your whatever, your 401k. That's your pursuit. But I also think that in order to like the whole goal of this is to be better, to have a better life. And it's just as important to know the world outside of your own vision. You got to know the beyond. I think that's just as important because knowing more things in life, embracing new experiences, visiting new places. I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, we tend to just see things in a particular way. So we don't, and because we see it that way, we don't try to experience our world. So I'll make an
Right.
example, right? When I was younger, I didn't care about traveling. I thought it was dumb, right? Like you spent this money just to go to some other fucking
Yeah.
place, right? And it's like, what's the point of this, right? I couldn't understand it, and that was a personal problem. So I never did it, and because of that, because I cared only about like doing the things I wanted, whether it's my hobbies or my job or my career, I never knew what the world beyond was like, right? That is just confinement, right? Like this is what should have happened to me. I think was to actually see the world, see how other people live, see how other people in other regions live, see the culture beyond our own. Right? If we look at why people are so upset when every time they turn on the TV and CNN talks some shit about like, oh, the Russians did this, the Americans, the Chinese did that,
Ukraine,
yeah,
yeah.
and everyone just gets so riled up. I think it's a cultural clash, man. We don't know how they live,
Yeah.
therefore we think how we live is how they live. I went down to Ohio once, the outback of Ohio, Willard. It's the tiniest place you ever find. And it's the people there, in their own right, they're actually very down to earth. They're actually very kind people.
Right.
It's just they grew up in a different way than we did. And a lot of those guys never went to Canada. They never saw the way we lived. So to them, like, if you replace Canadian with Chinese, of course they'll see the Chinese as something completely different. They see it with antagonism, right? Because they don't know what life is like beyond our border. If we just
Yeah.
live within our own confinement, we think this is how things are done,
Yeah.
right?
And right.
And it's there's a saying in Chinese, like "jing di zhuan," you know what I mean? The frog in the well, right? The frog's never gonna know what's beyond the well if he lives within it.
Right.
There needs to be a pursuit to push our people, our younger selves to go out there and explore the world. I wish I went to Europe. I wish I went back to China more often when I was younger. I wish I went to anywhere. I think what's crazy in the past year for me, I know I've been talking a lot, but for me, the past like half a year, I went on a couple of road trips, and like, let me tell you this, right? In my relationship, um, I used to get upset at Sarah, my girlfriend, right? We sometimes we'll make plans and we don't fall through on it, and I ended up having this perception of, you know, fuck it, I'm just not gonna go make plans for vacation and whatever. And a lot of times it's not even her fault that we don't go on vacation. Just timing never happened. So I shut down that like part of me that wants to see the world in that regard. And in the past and just the last 2 weeks, right? One of her friend invited us to go on a road trip. So I always had this. I, I had a low expectation, right? And this is what I mean. You got to allow yourself to be changed by the world around you. Allow others to open your vision up. Allow yourself to change and open some new ideas. We went on this road trip, bro, and it was fucking amazing. It was the best time of my life. It was awesome, and it's all because I was able to set aside things I believed before instead of letting my ego decide that, well, this is what I believe in, therefore, logically speaking, you got to do X and Y and believe in it and argue on behalf of it. You just gotta allow other people to change your mind.
Well, it comes down to we don't see the world how it is. We see it how we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with like say like a Chinese guy and a Canadian guy and an American guy not being able to, or a Russian guy, right? All these people not being able to truly see each other for being who we are is we're all just separated by an idea, right? You think about like, because think about think about the media we consume that gives us the impression of what those other people are like, and based on that idea of them, that's who they are to us, right? And then the other side, their media tells us that these people are.
I'm like, telling you, man, dude, I'm telling you.
And so when you realize it's like we as humans and races and ethnicities, all these cultures, we're separated by ideas about how we're different.
We're both unwilling to accept that people just live different lives, right? Like, we're shaped by our environment. How do you think you can change people's lives in terms of this whole process of how our environment shapes us?
A lot of the times we become victim to things that we can change, but then other times we try to change things that it's best to be accepted. And it's funny how often we do one thing when we should do the opposite. Right?
Yeah, dude. And like,
but it's about learning to cultivate that it's wisdom. I think that's wisdom to know when to do either one, where you're not attached to passivity, and at the same time you're not attached to your egotism to an unhealthy level.
Right. That's definitely true, man. We either take too much pride in our progress, or we don't give it enough credibility.
Find the balance in your life. Find what makes you happy, but don't get too caught up in trying to be happy, because then that's when you get sad. Right? Find that balance. If you like this video, give it a like. Hit the subscribe. We'd love to have you join us here on our journey. Is there anything you guys are struggling with, or kind of things that are on your mind? Right? Let's have a conversation. We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys around. Why is that okay for women, but when guys have a drippy dick, it's not okay?